Hi, and welcome to the course. Thanks for signing up. We're going to start things off by jumping right into some code. I don't expect you to follow all these examples. We'll cover these examples in more detail later on in the course. For now, let's just go over what it's like to interact with Spark from a Spark driver program. Let's begin. I always appreciate it when my instructors would start off a course with some code and some examples right away. I'm going to do that today with you all as well. Let's cover some of the things we'll be learning in this course through example. Don't worry if this doesn't make sense to you yet. We're going to cover it all in much more detail during the course. But let's start off with an example. I'm going to start up a Spark driver program here called Apache Spark. It takes a few minutes, well maybe not that long, but while it's starting up, I want to set the stage for the example. By now, I'm sure you've heard of the company called Uber. It is a way to share rides, and it is really taking on the taxi industry throughout the world. It's been, well, let's just say controversial in some cities. One of the cities that it was controversial in was New York. A while back, there was some publicly released data about Uber pickups and the amount of activity that's happening in New York. We're going to use the data from this website that I'm showing you here. And this data, just to give you an overview of it, looks like this CSV file. We have a base number, a date, the active number of Uber vehicles, and trips. So all this data is described in more detail here on this GitHub site, which you can take a look at after the example. But for now, that's the stage for what we're going to be doing. We're going to be analyzing this Uber data as it occurred in New York over a period of time. We're going to take a look at it using Python and Spark. I'm going to download this file to a location that I can easily load it into Spark. And I've done that already. So you'll see in the next example here how I load it up. I'm sure the driver program has been started by now, and it has. So let's start things off by loading in the CSV file of Uber data from New York. We're going to use the Spark context, SC, and we're going to call a function called text file. This is going to create a new resilient distributed data set called UT. Again, these concepts like Spark context, resilient distributed data set, and more will be covered later on the course. Now that we have the CSV file, a pointer to that CSV file, let's call an Spark action on it. Let's see how many rows are in that file. Okay, 355. Let's see what the first row of that file looks like. Okay, it's as expected. We saw the CSV before. We see some of the column names in it. Let's do a little bit more with this data. Let's split it up by comma. And we're going to create a new RDD called rows. So we're going to use a map transformation call and pass in a function, a Python lambda. Let's see how many distinct bases there are in this data. Okay, we've mapped over the rows RDD and paying specific attention to the first column, or it's a zero-based indexed data set. So we use 0 instead of 1. And we've determined that there are 7 unique bases in this data. Let's take a look at what those bases, the names of those bases. Okay. We can see that all the distinct names, including the column header dispatching base number here. Let's dive into this a little bit more. Let's filter the data and look at a particular base. Let's look at base B02617. There's 59 rows in this data for that particular base. Let's create a new RDD for this base so we can conveniently use it in the future, such as how many rows are in this data where there was more than 15,000 trips. So it appears that there's 6 rows of data where there was more than 15,000 trips. We can confirm that in another way. Okay, so we're diving deeper into this data. Let's keep going. Let's create a new RDD. Let's exclude the first row in this RDD or this CSV file by passing in a function and excluding where the line has the name base in it. And then again, let's split it based on comma. So now we've got a filtered rows RDD that is all ready for us to use. For example, we can determine the total number of trips for each base by, first of all, creating a new RDD from filtered rows with map. We're going to create a pair RDD that contains keys and values, the key here being the base name and the value being the trips for that particular day. Next, we're going to call reduce by key and call collect to display the results. The results are we have a total number of trips across the time frame in New York per base. So we can see B02617 had over 700,000 trips for this particular time frame. I wonder what was the most busy base, the Uber base at this time frame. Well, I think it would be easier to see if we sorted it. So let's call reduce by key against the new RDD that we're creating with map, same as before. But let's use take ordered to return the top 10, and we'll order it by the value in the key value pair RDD. This makes it easier to read. We can now see that B02764 had the most trips over the time frame compared to 2617 here by over 1 million. Okay, so we're off and running here. We're using Python in a Spark driver program. We're using Spark transformations and RDDs and actions, and we're analyzing data. So with this example in hand, we're going to stop now and review some of these key concepts that we covered in this example, and then we're going to get into even more examples. So I'll see you in the next lecture.